Welcome back to the second edition of Racing World for 2026. Well, we're going to get right into it straight away. As we said, a whole new type of format in the show this year. And first thing up, Alex Palou. Got to be some of the biggest news of the week, having to pay McLaren some $12 million in terms of settlement over the lawsuit that they had between the two of them. Don't think it's completely done and dusted yet. Palou saying yesterday that he's evaluating some of his options. But at the end of the day, he's going to have to pay Zach 12 mil. That's a fair chunk of change no matter how you look at it. There was a rumour and there was a bit of a story and a quote from Bob Pockinax, who follows IndyCar and NASCAR, saying that Chip Ganassi was going to pay some of the fees. Now, I interpret that when they say fees as in legal, lawyer cost, not the actual fine, if you like. So that could get very misinterpreted pretty easily. And at first glance, even I did that, thought, wow, Chip's not going to pay 12 mil, that's for sure. So I think that there's probably a little bit more to that story as well. One thing that would be interesting there would be that's Ganassi kind of showing favouritism towards one of his drivers. So I don't know how well that'd go down with the others. Then again, they might completely ignore it. Then again, the story might be a giant smokescreen. But either way, Alex Palou, you got to fork out 12 mil this week, buddy. And it doesn't matter how many Indy 500 you win, 12 mil's a fair chunk of change. Staying with the IndyCar theme right now, IndyCar Content Day is this week. We'll have a report from that. We're going to get across it and talk to as many drivers as we can for our next show. So that'll be out in about a week's time. The annual Content Day happening back in Indianapolis. A lot of drivers flying back from the Rolex Daytona 24-hour. We'll talk about that in a minute. But it'll be good to talk to some of those drivers. A lot of anticipation towards the season. And of course, for drivers like Mick Schumacher, who you heard from last week, this is their first content day. So that'll be a bit of an experience for them as well. Staying with the Indy theme right now, we're looking towards the 500 and some of the other things that are taking place around the greater IndyCar scene. Talk comes out today of the fact that there may be a street race in Washington, D.C. and it's kind of in the works, shall we say. Is that good, bad, or otherwise? Well, I'm going to speak my mind as I said I would. I don't think so. Reason I don't think so is we have enough street races on this calendar. Let's get back to some oval racing as well. There are plenty of good ovals out there that could be used. Yes, some of them are owned by NASCAR and the France family and all of those sort of scenarios, but those ovals still need to be raced on. I'm thinking Homestead, where the season once finished a few times, and it started there as well. Great little oval. We've got Michigan that probably hardly anyone ever goes to anymore, and yet it was the same exact dimensions as the former Fontana Speedway in California, which of course no longer exists. Great facility and a super speedway as well, 2.5 miles. So we kind of need to get back to that. Obviously, we're not going to Iowa this year. Don't think Kentucky's ever going to be back. Looks like Chicago is getting rebuilt. Could go there. Season ended there a few times. Saw Dixon run out of fuel there in a chase with Dario Franchitti for a championship title. So that's another track we could go to. So I'm saying, and this is me, I don't think we need another street race. Washington, yeah, pretty good venue, good backdrop, but I don't think we need another street race. So let's see how that one plays out. Now, speaking of other things within IndyCar, of course, the on-again, off-again, on-again, off-again rumour mill still is just rumour mill. Will Honda stay at the end of this year or won't they? That's going to be a big thing, but it surfaced again the other day about what it would take to tool up Ilmor Engineering and for Penske to run Ilmor Engineering to supply the grid. That's a really, really, really big ask. So he needs Honda to stay more than ever right now. That could be quite a tipping point. And again, when you look at the strength in INSMA right now and 19 manufacturers and more coming, that's a great sign. IndyCar have been trying to get this third manufacturer for so many years now, and it still hasn't happened. We had Lotus in disguise come in a few years back. That didn't really work and they didn't hang around long. They were the slowest car in the Indy 500. In fact, John Alesi was even waved off for being too slow. So that proved a point there. But we do need at least Honda to stay and another manufacturer. Absolutely no doubt. Will they come? Well, when you think about it, Audi's in Formula One now. Cadillac's under the GM brand anyway, so we've already got them. Ford, they're in Formula One now, so there's not many people floating around, so they really do need to keep Honda. There's absolutely no doubt about that. 500, well, it's not that far away. It's only 32 days now till we start the season in St. Pete, and then of course the month of May rolls around pretty quickly, so things to think of there. Dreyer Reinbold yet to announce their lineup. We still have the one seat remaining at Dale Coyne, as we said last week. Feel that'll be Romain Grosjean. It's got to be another worst kept secret. then the other entries that potentially come in for the 500. We know McLaren will field the 4th car with Ryan Hunter-Reay, former winner of that race, in that team. That could be a strong bet. Ganassi don't think the squad's going to change there. Penske don't think the squad's going to change there. We look towards the other teams then. Andretti, well, there is talk of Herta doing this. Herta spoke at Daytona this week, whether he would or wouldn't be back. He wants to be back. But here's the kicker. We have this clash of brands, shall we say, where Herta is a Chevy/Cadillac driver, and yet if he was to run the 500, he'd be driving in a Honda-powered car. So those manufacturers are going to have to agree to that, because at the end of the day, it's Cadillac that pays his wages right now, plus the fact that they don't want to see him get hurt. The desire to be in the 500, massive. Is he capable? Of course he is. It doesn't matter if he loses, misses out on the first few races. He's more than capable of being there. So will we see that happen? Then we've got the other one-off entries coming in. Will Foyt run an extra car? All of those scenarios. So there's a lot of things to go to get us to the field of 33 right now. I'm doing the maths and I'm only getting to the mid-20s. So that's about right for this time of the year. Things will change. They always do. Month of May is still a fair way away. The open test is still a long way away. One thing's for certain, nothing beats the 110th running of the Indy 500. Onwards now, and I'm going to give this a bit of a plus, and it's a plus for INSMA versus a negative for INDYCAR. Boy, oh boy, INSMA, you're doing a great job. Here I am in New Zealand, and I'm watching the Rolex Daytona 24-hour live on YouTube. All day. I just had it on like a radio, watching it, trying to do other jobs around home, trying to make this podcast, keep watching the Daytona 24-hour. It's there. INSMA are getting the message out. They're getting the fan base out. They're getting everything out. They're not hiding things. And then they released this to the media the other day and other people. And here it is, a flyover the entire grid of this year's Rolex Daytona 24-hour race. 70 cars, 220 odd drivers spread across the 4 categories: LMP, LMP2, GTD and GTD Pro. So just magnificent to get footage like this, and they're making it available to broadcasters. This is a great way of getting coverage for your series. They're doing it. They're seen to be fan friendly. They're just ticking so many boxes right now that any other series around the world needs to look at this. This is why you're getting sellout crowds at things like Road Atlanta last year, massive crowds at Daytona this year, more fans there. They're coming midweek, they're coming early, merchandise is selling, car brands are getting interested. That it's a snowballing effect that's working very, very well, and all kudos has got to go to everyone behind that, because they are doing a great job. So take note, probably IndyCar first, maybe NASCAR that follows, and then other series around the world, and domestic series like maybe even the one here in New Zealand. This is a great way of getting the product out there. So massive applause to everyone at INSMA, and halfway through the 24-hour race now, and boy oh boy, it's good stuff. The first of this week's negatives, if you like, Formula One. Well, here we have this massive, massive rule change in this series, bigger than ever been seen before. The launch of new fuels, new aerodynamics, new power units, all sorts of things. Movable wings, which I saw on the Ferrari in its laps that it did at Farinello the other day. Just awesome. Thing is, we've seen a few car launches now. Will the cars actually look like that later on? Probably not. But, at least we've seen that. We've seen Audi's colour scheme. It looks very Audi-like, but it's a good job, and it's good to have them in the championship and reflect yet another car brand. The thing that I'm anti is the fact that this week we have the test at Barcelona. No media are allowed there. There'll be no media access whatsoever. Not that I was going to attend, but it means that there's no news coming out. So therefore, as a Formula One fan, you're not getting the news. Sure, it'll leak out. They don't want embarrassment in case these cars don't do the mileage that they're expecting them to do. They don't want people to see, poor performances and tarnish the series and start to rubbish the series. They want to do it all behind closed doors. I can understand that reasoning very, very well. I understand that fully. And also, if you were doing it as a live stream or a broadcast, there's nothing worse than having no cars on track for hours on end. That's a great way to lose viewers. So I do understand that. But this cone of secrecy that they're putting around it, yes, it makes you want to get to the day one Bahrain test. Absolutely, because that's what you're hanging out for. But we're just kind of teasing us with all these launches. We're seeing the cars. We're seeing some shakedown laps that most of the teams have revealed online now. But then we don't get to see the very first part of the test. So it kind of leaves you hanging. But roll on Bahrain, I think we're in for a cracker season. I think anyone can win this championship this year. Mercedes certainly look in good form. Mercedes powered cars are in good form, but then comes the regulation things, and the FIA are investigating this loophole that Mercedes have found to do with compression and compression ratios and stuff. Will that become an issue? I hope not, because we're going to have this big black cloud over the series before it even gets going. Can Mercedes change that to all their engines and all those sorts of things in the amount of time they would have? I don't know. I'm not an engineer, but it seems like a big task to me. If they found a loophole, then good on them. Will that translate to winning races later on? Only George Russell, Kimi Antonelli, and everyone else that's driving a Mercedes, including the McLaren drivers, can tell you that. Interesting comment too from Flavio Briatore, saying that one of the reasons he came back to the Alpine team was the fact that they were running a Mercedes power unit this year. He wouldn't have come back unless they were running that type of power unit. Kind of doesn't say much for the original French engine, the Renault, but there you go. Mercedes in the back of that car yesterday. Briatore, of course, a master of so many things. So again, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Bits of concern over Lewis's laps that he did at the test track and the shakedown, but I'm not going to read anything into that. Pumped up Lewis. So good to see Formula One just round the block, not too far away, as with the other series, and of course, sports car kicking off this very weekend. And just finishing off this pretty rapid fire show, because next week we'll have a lot of drivers that we're going to talk to, as mentioned, from the IndyCar content days and then ultimately the Indy Next content days as well. Sadly, no New Zealanders in Indy Next this year. Callum Hedge looking at other options that are available, and Liam Skeets looking at other options as well. I'm going to support these guys first and foremost, always have. Great believer in both those guys. The thing is, it is very, very hard. It's very hard to raise that amount of money. For people who live in North America that are watching this, you must remember that the New Zealand dollar only buys about 52 cents American. So for us, when we go to your country, the thing is, we double the price of everything. So even a Starbucks is working out at about $10 for us, as opposed to $5 that you guys are used to. So for a driver to raise the amount of money that they need to be in those series, it's a very, very big ask. It's very hard to get that amount of money out of New Zealand. And of course, there are a lot of drivers in the US that are competing for exactly that same amount of money. So sad not to see them there. I'm a great supporter, as I've said, and we'll see more of them. You can see more of their story too in Kiwis Born to Fly 3. And I've decided that I'm going to play excerpts from the documentary once it's aired here in New Zealand. So for people who do watch the podcast, don't worry, you're not going to miss out. We'll show you bits and pieces throughout there, all the extended, unedited interviews, so you'll see them in their raw form. And one of my favorites was talking to Earl Bamber at Atlanta last year. Just fantastic to talk to him. So those are definitely coming. Staying on that New Zealand theme though, we're in the weekend of the third round of the international series here, if you like. Mixed number of drivers now winning races in the Toyota events, the CT Frock as it's called. Ryan Wood, supercar driver, taking out good points earnings here, good racehorse. The teams are at Teretonga, the southernmost racetrack in the world. Been there many, many times. I know it's raining down there this weekend. It ain't a pleasant place when it's raining. Very demanding racetrack, very, very big first corner. You've got to really commit to that corner. It's high speed, very long, massive long straight, nearly a kilometre long. So in the US, over half a mile long. It's a big straight. But the series is going well. Again, the New Zealand Grand Prix next weekend. I hope that the media machine gets around that. I have no doubt that it will. You've got to remember that other than Macau and New Zealand, no other country can officially say that they are a Grand Prix as a nation. Now, we can have these things like the Grand Prix of St. Pete or whatever. They're play on names. But for a country, this is the New Zealand Grand Prix, just like the Macau Grand Prix, just like every Formula One Grand Prix. It's a hangover from the Tasman days of years gone by when Bruce McLaren, Denny Hulme, Chris Amon ran on there, and New Zealand was awarded Grand Prix status. That has never changed and stays in place. So the Grand Prix is next weekend in New Zealand, and we'll talk more about that in next week's show. As I said, rapid fire show this week. Lots happening, lots going on. Alex Palou, certainly the big news this week, without a doubt. Absolutely big. IndyCar may be talking about new venues. Let's see, we've heard some of those stories before, but that's how those things start. Innsma rocking the boat with the Daytona 24-hour. Fantastic race, only halfway, well, not even halfway yet as I say this, and it's just fantastic playing itself out. Great to everybody that wrote in last week. Really, really appreciate that. As I said, I'm here to answer any of the questions. Really look forward to hopefully catching up with some of you across the season as well. That's a bucket list item for me, without a doubt. Can't appreciate that enough. Once again, have much more for you next week. Got to go right now, but I'll be back in a week's time. Thanks for watching Racing World.